I'm Philip Daniels.
I'm Joe Cardoso.
I'm Jeff Barnes.
This is The Perspective.
And this is The Perspective.
Welcome to The Perspective. I'm Philip Daniels.
I'm Joe Cardoso.
I'm Jeff Barnes.
This is The Perspective.
And welcome to The Perspective. I am Jeff Barnes, and it's just going to be me tonight, folks. We have a lot of things going on. Once again, we pray for Phil Daniels and his family as they go through a tough time. There's some unfortunate weather going on in Texas, so AJ won't be joining us. And of course, Joe is transitioning, so we won't be seeing Joe for a couple of weeks. So it's going to be just my perspective tonight. So I hope you bear with me, and I hope you hang out and enjoy the show. So with that being said, I'm going to jump right into it. It's been a while. Once again, we have 3 shows left. This is the third of the 3. We'll be back in 2 weeks again, 2 shows in June, and then we are on hiatus for a while before we come back for the new season. So we hope you're back. We'll join us. We'll have the whole crew back there all together, one big happy family. AJ is a full-time cast member now, so you'll be seeing AJ every week. So he's not just going to be floating in with us unless something happens. So once again, thank you for staying with us and going right into segment 1. So we got some recent news that Matt Ryan is now going into the broadcast booth. He's going to be an analyst. And so we're going to look at this, but he said he's not retiring. What does that mean for Matt Ryan? Well, it means a couple of things. He's a veteran quarterback. So the first thing is, it means that Matt Ryan is saying, yeah, I'm going to do this because, one, I don't want to be sitting at home doing nothing. So going to the broadcast booth makes sense. But he's also leaving his options open. So in case somebody needs a veteran quarterback at some point during the season, he could easily transition from the booth back to the sideline with a helmet on. And once he learns that team's offense, playbook, whatever it is, if it's a place he's been before, then it's as simple as pie. He jumps back into the offense. But what he's doing is, just like Romo did when he transitioned to the booth, he didn't retire right away because just in case he got that call that intrigued him enough to come back to playing, he's going to do it. So that's what Matt Ryan is doing. When he said, yeah, I'm going to the booth, but I'm not going to retire just yet. He's going to leave that option open. And it happens. We've seen guys get ready to go to the booth, and all of a sudden they get a call at the last minute and actually know they're back in a training camp. So kudos to Matt Ryan for being a little business savvy instead of just saying I'm retiring and then that's that. And what tends to happen in the NFL is when people think you're retired, and unless they really are really looking at you in particular, they pretty much leave you alone. So he's not cutting off playing in the future. That's why he says, I am not retiring, but I am going to the broadcast booth. So kudos to Matt Ryan. Maybe after a year or two, if he doesn't go back to the sideline, then he officially does retire. But it's a smart move to say, listen, I'm going to the booth. I'm not turning any papers in. I'm not announcing any retirement. I'm still open to playing. But right now I'm going to broadcast until I get a call that's worth it. So we've seen it done with other quarterbacks. We've seen it done with other players. Smart move by Matt Ryan. We just saw Ndamukong Suh come out and say, yeah, I'm not rushing to join the team right now. I'll wait till maybe training camp, maybe a little bit later than that before I decide. Once again, veteran guys, veteran players tend to want to stick to themselves for a while, take the time to let their body heal, put less wear and tear on the body so they can last longer during now a 17-game season. They don't want to play in preseason. They don't want to do all the mini camps and workouts if they don't have to. If they're just going to come in and be murked for a year, then they're just going to come in when they feel like it, as opposed to being there all year. So that's what you're seeing more and more with the veteran players. They're starting to understand, listen, my body's older. It can't take the pounding. I'm going to limit that kind of pounding by, plain and simple, holding out as long as I can before I have to be there. So that is the case with Matt Ryan. I'm going to the booth. I'm going to enjoy the game. I'm going to stay involved, but I am not going to retire. I'm just going to hang on just in case I get a call that intrigues me enough to come back to playing football. So we go from one quarterback to another. All right. So Tennessee, we know the Tennessee Titans still have a veteran quarterback on the center, right? But they've been trying to replace him. Last year they drafted Malik Willis. Now they drafted, of course, um, out of Kentucky, everybody's favorite whipping boy in the draft, all right, Will Levis. Okay, so what does that put? You have a new GM. What does that put Malik Willis? You have a new GM, new system basically coming in offensively. What does that put Will Levis? Well, what it does is puts Will Levis in competition with their starter. So Malik Willis is the odd man out, right? Everybody's saying, oh, he's not going to make it through training camp. Well, we don't know that for sure. Okay, he could actually have a pretty good preseason, a pretty good training camp, and stick around. But what happens with him in the future if he doesn't make this roster is he's going to have to hope and pray somebody in the NFL says we liked him enough during the draft process to bring him in as a QB3, let him learn, get him groomed, that maybe he could be a long-term backup, maybe a spot starter where he has to come in and carry the team while somebody's out. So that could be the case for Malik Willis. We've seen this before where a guy gets drafted by a team, it doesn't work out, he doesn't look great as a rookie, and most quarterbacks don't look great as rookies. He had a very, very bad showing as a rookie last year. He wasn't ready. The team was different. Okay. I mean, can we say this about Tennessee's offense last year? It wasn't the Tennessee offense we saw when they had A.J. Brown. Even when they had Julio Jones on the outside, they were a different team than what we saw last year. The passing game was limited. The running game, and Henry was healthy, was the only thing that was explosive, right? And their defense wasn't the same. So they suffered a lot of losses last year. The injuries didn't help. And plain and simple, the offense just got stale because of the losses listen, you never really replace Brown. Treylon Burks is a young receiver. He wasn't ready for that mantle yet, and they threw too much on him. And there's a reason why they have a new GM. Now, the new GM, when you have a regime change like that, he is not beholden to the previous guy's roster. He's going to mold it and shape it the way he wants it. So by going out there and saying, I'm going to draft Will Levis in round 2, says, Malik Willis, I am not comfortable with you. So if we have the same situation where we had last year, where my starter gets hurt again, who's on the last year of his expensive deal, there's no guarantee for him in the future. So I'm not comfortable with you going forward. So I'm going to draft a guy I think I'm going to make me a little more comfortable. They like Will Levis. Now, if you watch the draft coverage, I said a lot about Will Levis, and people go, well, I didn't trash Will Levis, okay? I trashed the notion that he was a top 10 pick because he wasn't, okay? And it showed in the draft that even the league didn't believe he was either. I believe that Will Levis could be a capable starter. I don't think you want to build your franchise on him. I think he's a guy, if you could draft him and get the most out of him during that first contract, maybe even a couple years into the second contract before you realize that you have a better starter somewhere down the road, or you groom somebody to take his job, then so be it. That's where you want to go. But you don't want this to be, Will Levis, this is your job for the foreseeable future. Well, there's a lot of flaws in his game, which is why he fell out of round 1. If it wasn't, he would have probably gone before Richardson. But because both of those guys are underdeveloped. But when you talk about Will Levis, there's a lot more mechanical flaws in his game that aren't going to be totally fixable. And you saw it, like I said, you saw it on this film. You saw it at the combine. You saw it a little at his pro day. He didn't really make those bad throws at the pro day because they're scripted. He made the throws he was comfortable with. So, but he wasn't going to go with throws that made him that challenged him in a way that made him look bad. And that's what most quarterbacks at their pro day do. All right. So, but the question is, where does this take Malik Willis? Well, like we said, Malik Willis, his thing is now I got to come out, show out, and make sure some team, if the Titans don't want me, somebody wants me. And it's hard to do when you're not going to be given the real shot. So it'd be different if they had a long-term veteran who they were comfortable with going forward for many, many years. This is our guy. Not so fast with Will Levis. Okay, with Will Levis, they're looking at him and saying, okay, you're our guy for now. If we have to go in a different route in the future, for the next 3-4 years at least, we're going to be comfortable with you in this quarterback room. Now, if he goes out there and doesn't perform time and time again, don't be surprised if he gets replaced by another veteran or another draft pick in another year or two. So that can happen real easily. We've seen it before. Like I said, they're not beholden to anybody on this roster. It is in flux right now. You know, they were a contender before. They are not now. So they're going to have to do a lot of different things to try and get this roster back to where they want it to be. In order to do that, it starts at the quarterback position, having a long-term answer. They don't really have that. Will Levis is an answer possibly for the long term. So that's what they're looking at. Malik Willis is not that answer anymore. Like I said, they've already started looking towards moving on without him. It's up to him to show to other teams that I'm capable of playing at this level, and you'll want me on your roster at some point, whether it's QB2 or even QB3, but you're going to want me on your roster. If not, if he continues to struggle this training camp and nobody picks him up, then he'll be playing in the spring in one of the 2 spring leagues. But I understand the frustration of people, but he wasn't given a real shot. Let's be realistic. He was just thrown out there in a situation last year. Well, even the starters struggled. If it wasn't for Josh Dobbs, they wouldn't have had a chance at the playoffs. Josh Dobbs didn't play great. He played capable football, right? So you wanted a rookie to go out there and play capable football. It doesn't always happen. I'll be honest with you. We've had some great rookies. We had some great quarterbacks who had horrible rookie years. Okay, Troy Aikman didn't want to get a single win until his second year in the NFL, and it wasn't for lack of trying during his rookie year. Peyton Manning, 3-13, we all know, but the 20+ interceptions his rookie year. So you can go to a lot of quarterbacks in their rookie years and how bad they looked before they finally got it figured out. Malik Willis was a rookie last year on a team that was really, realistically, not as talented as it was when they were in the playoffs contending. There were injuries that kind of hampered that offense even more, hampered the defense definitely. They weren't built for the matchups they were facing, and they were struggling at it, So at this point, you have to look at it and say, where does Malik Willis go from here? Plain and simple. You got to show out and hope that somebody takes you on or trades for you, because right now it looks like Tennessee's willing to say, we're ready to move on. So they're going to hold on to him, hoping that he shows out so they could trade him. If he doesn't show out, then he's going to be part of these final cuts in the August, at the end of August. So you better believe if teams really believe in him, they'll be one of the ones claiming him off of waivers. So that's where you are with Malik Willis. All right. So like I said, folks, it's just my smiling face tonight. There's 2 segments down. We got one more, and then you get my final perspective. So we'll have a little more of an abbreviated show. We won't go as long because there's only one speaker. So half an hour show today. And we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with more of the perspective. Make sure you stay tuned. We'll be right back.
In 2006, we founded Yeti Coolers with a simple mission: build the cooler we use every day if it existed. One that was built for the serious outdoor enthusiasts rather than for mass discount retailers. One that could take the abuse we knew we'd put it through, out in the field and on the water. One that simply wouldn't break. We decided early on that production innovation would come from necessity and first-hand experience, not from market research and data analysis. Today, Yeti products perform when it matters most. Whether that be an excursion into the remote Alaskan wilderness, chasing redfish on the Gulf Coast, or just getting together with friends in the backyard, we make gear that helps you stay out longer, travel farther, and live harder. Hashtag built for the wild.
And welcome back to The Perspective. Once again, I am Jeff Barnes. So it's just me today. If you're looking for the other guys, just me tonight. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. Hopefully we have the whole crew back. We're working on it. Right now, we're on our third segment of the show. So it's going to be a real quick show tonight. Like I said, we're already on segment 3. So here we are talking AFC East versus NFC East. Okay, which division is tougher? Well, very tough question. When you look at it, both of these divisions had multiple teams in the playoffs last year. Almost got 3 in there, if you think about it. Miami and New England had basically knocked each other off to get the one in the playoffs last year, to get Miami in. Dallas got in last year. The Giants did get in, so there were 3 NFC East teams. And Washington, had they not had a epic collapse the last few weeks of the season, was just outside of it. So when you think about it, the NFC East really was one of the most competitive divisions. But it also helped that the NFC North really only had one team in the playoffs. The NFC South had one team in the playoffs, and because of that, you saw what you saw. 2 teams in the playoffs for the NFC North. Forgot that you had the Vikings in there. So anyway, what we're getting back to. Actually, no, there was one team. Sorry. It was, forgive me, correcting myself again. One team. It was the Vikings alone. Lions and the Packers were both eliminated final week. So, yes, there were almost 2 NFC North teams in there. NFC South, of course, had one. Of course, the West had added a wild card team in Seattle. So, a lot of tough teams, to say the least, in the NFC. Those divisions are pretty tough, but the NFC East, we talk about the 2 East divisions. People are going to always say the AFC East, right? They're going to say, well, you got Buffalo, you got Miami, you have New England, right? And then you have the Jets, who had Aaron Rodgers. They're loaded. That's 4 tough teams. Well, that NFC East was beating a lot of people last year. When you look at it, of course, the team that was a runner-up to the Super Bowl, the NFC champion Eagles, you got to start there. You talk about the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs, second year in a row. Unfortunately, San Francisco that takes them out in the divisional round. So when you think about that, yeah, it's a tough team, and they're a tough out. You know, they just don't roll over. So that's another tough team. The New York Giants, going to the playoffs last year, upset Minnesota on the road. Then go and they, of course, just no match for the Eagles the third time around. So it took an NFC East team to destroy the Giants. Think about that, right? They didn't lose to the North, right? And even the NFC West, when you talk about the Niners, very tough battle with them in Dallas. So there were no blowouts when it came down to it outside of the NFC East. It's a very tough division. The only team that you could possibly say doesn't match up is Washington, but we see what's going on there. They're going with a younger quarterback, so they're still in flux, unlike the AFC East, where 3 of those teams are established, and what you have are the Jets, who just made a big move to get a veteran quarterback to help elevate that young team. So if you got to go tougher, I'm going to say the AFC East, just because of the fact that you have all 4 teams, as we saw last year, are capable of making the playoffs. In the NFC East, however, you have at least 3 that are capable. Washington, depending on how they come together, because they're mixing old and young, how they come together could make it 4. But So you have 3 and a possible versus an even 4. Of course, you got to go with even 4 if you're a spades player, right? So same thing with this. You got to go with the AFC East in this case, not because the NFC East isn't tough, but they just have one extra team that's playoff ready right now in the New York Jets. You can't say that same thing about the Washington Commanders. They just, you don't look at them right now and say they're playoff ready. No, you say they could be a playoff team if they turn around and pull this off season off, bring this team together the way that they're hoping to do it. But right now, what you're seeing with this Washington Commanders team is new ownership coming in. They're going to go with the younger quarterback. They're trying to make moves without spending a lot of money. So they really go crazy in free agency. They try to do this with their young talent, keeping a lot of their older players and mixing in some veterans off the street. So kudos to Ron Rivera saying, this is my formula. It worked for me before. It's going to work for me here. I just got to get the right quarterback. They think Sam Howell's the guy. He sure enough put it on Dallas that final game of the regular season last year. I think it's a little bit different next time around when he's actually got to play them in meaningful times. People say I was a lot on it, but they needed Philadelphia to lose. Philadelphia wasn't losing to the Giants at that point. It was a close game, but Dallas didn't exactly endear you with the way they played that day. It kind of looked like they were reserved to being a wild card. So kudos to the Commanders for saying, we believe in this young man. We like him. He's our future. However, if you look at it, 4 teams capable of going into the playoffs in the AFC East versus 3 and a possible in the NFC East, you got to go AFC East as a tougher division. With that being said, it's time for my perspective. And this week, let's talk about those Washington Commanders. And honestly, it's about time the sale went through. This needed to happen. It's been talked about long enough. More and more just kept coming out with the Snyders. It was a big distraction. And regardless of anybody in the organization is going to say it's not a distraction, we were able to do what we're supposed to do if we go out there and perform. Yes and no. Nothing's worse than when you're in a press conference and you're answering questions not football related. Okay, when you talk about the Snyders, it's not football related. They're not playing, they're not coaching, they're owners. They're in a box watching the game. All right. So unless you're talking about what they think of their front office, or do you think they want to re-sign certain guys, then that's only football related questions, but that's not the questions you're getting about the Snyders for all of these years, right? You're getting, about what this lawsuit here, what the government found here, are you cooking the books? Everything that could go wrong with the Snyders went wrong, other than them getting criminal charges, right? So you have to look at what we're seeing in this changeover, right? So you're going to have another minority owner come in Magic Johnson. Kudos to Magic for finally getting in. He's tried several times to get into the NFL as an owner. He's finally succeeded. However, okay, let's be realistic. When the Washington Commanders show up at the owners' meetings, Magic Johnson's not going to be there. Okay, it's going to be the majority owner because they always have the majority owner, the speaking owner comes. The only exception is in Buffalo with the Pagulas, right? You don't see the wife there. She's apparently the majority owner, not the husband, but he's the one that goes. So I still think that that you want more diversity in the ownership room, but you got to have a majority owner that's a minority besides Shad Khan. Okay, so there's still room for improvement in that situation. I appreciate all of the minority owners that have come in the past 5-10 years. Granted, you've had a bunch in Miami, but they're more showpieces than they are, owners. They're not going in there telling, them how to run a team, as you saw, which is why they lost a first-round pick. Okay, it's just different. Okay, the way things are with these NFL teams, if you're a part of an ownership group, okay, you're seeing it with Condoleezza Rice and all of them in Denver. They're actually in the building. But when it comes down to it, when they call those owners meetings in Florida or in Arizona or wherever they want to do them, you're not seeing all of those people traveling there because they're not in those meetings. It's, the Jerrys, the Maras, you're going to see those guys. You're going to see Davis. Okay, the owners you're used to seeing, or the new owners, the Cronkies. Okay, you're going to see those guys. You're not going to see the Magics and the Condoleezas and all those other owners because they're not invited to those meetings. It's the operating owners, the majority shareholder, okay, that goes to those meetings. Okay, so that's what you want, is you want to start seeing more of them people getting in there. You want to see that change. That dynamic isn't changing. So guess what? The owners meetings are still going to have this virtually the same kind of representation. So as much as we talk about owners need to change this, and owners, this is a great step, adding more minority owners. They're going to have a lot of influence in that team facility. But when it comes down to league, that crew is still intact. Even though you may have gotten one more group out in the Snyders. The Snyders, let's face it, they weren't great, right? They didn't exactly run that franchise well to begin with. Okay, look at how FedEx Field has aged so poorly. Okay, so that shows you how that organization was run. It just wasn't run very well, and it shows you from top to bottom with scandal after scandal after scandal. What you want to see is ownership come in that's going to not only take care of that franchise, but finally move this league forward from the top. We haven't seen that. Okay, we see things that move them forward as far as making money, right? But we don't see that, right? We talk, one of the biggest ownership decisions that affects everyday fans is the video games, right? The video game licensing. Everybody, you turn around, oh, Madden. Everybody hates Madden, but there's no other NFL game. Why? Because they have exclusive rights to make NFL games. It's not like the old days where we had Tecmo, you had Joe Montana, you had Madden, you had every other NFL game they could have before they finally said one license, one vendor. And once they did that, it shut all that other stuff down. Well, that's why you don't have competition for Madden. So everybody's craving for 2K. Well, they got to outbid Madden. And honestly, I'd rather you have more than one vendor for video games because honestly, I don't think anything's wrong with Madden. I play the game just fine. I love it. I like the changes. It doesn't change much. To be honest with you, there's not much you can change about the game. The NFL game hasn't changed that much. Okay, they change enough that goes with the game as it is. There's certain other things that they could add in there. I would love for them to change certain things about it. They're not going to do that. So they're going to keep it. The promise to Madden was they keep it as true to football as they should be. They've virtually done that. If you're a gamer and you want all this crazy stuff, that's not Madden. Let's be realistic. That is not Madden. 2K gave you a little of that, but once again, in the end of the day, football has got to be football. So I think that's where you look at it. Even FIFA and everybody, the games are meant to be realistic. They're not meant to be outlandish. Okay, 10-yard fight and NFL blitz are outlandish games. You're not going to get those. But in the end, the owner said one vendor, one license. So that's why you have just Madden. That's an ownership decision that affects you fans. You don't want to buy Madden? Don't buy it. I'm still going to buy it. I love the game. So, but getting back on subject, I'm kind of veering off of my original perspective, which was, once again, the ownership change with the Commanders. Like I said, it's great to add more minority owners in the NFL, but once again, what you're going to see is the same thing, the same consistency of the faces in that room are going to be mostly the same color because the majority owner is not a person of color. It's just the way it is, guys. Until you get a group that comes in with a majority stakeholder that's a minority and they approve it and sell to that person, that room doesn't change. You may get some other ideas in that room. Good luck getting it past Kraft. Right. Yeah. Right. So think about that. Right. There's a lot of guys in that room and a few others. Everybody goes, well, what about Jerry? Yeah. Everybody says Jerry. That's easy, low hanging fruit. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of old ideas in that room still. And you got to get, you want more in there? You got to get somebody in there who's a majority stakeholder of color that's actually going to do things that advance the way they do things. That's not going to change by hiring people underneath them. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way in corporate America. It's not going to work that way here in the NFL. That's my perspective. So thank you for tuning in. Like I said, this is a little bit shorter show because it's just me this week, but we are back in 2 weeks. Hopefully the gang will be all back together. We don't know about Joe just yet because, like I said, there's a big transition going on there. But eventually when he is back and up and running, he will be back in the host chair and I get to slide back into the analyst seat. But until then, you just got to hang with me for just one more minute. But we'll be back in 2 weeks, folks. Jeff Barnes here for The Perspective. For the guys that aren't here, thanks for watching. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Take care, everybody. This has been The Perspective.